Hey guys, you're watching Dansky, the place to be to develop your creative skills. In this tutorial, which is part 2, we're going to be taking the design that we created and jumping into an app called ProtoPie. Now, what ProtoPie does is enable us to add lots of transitions, animation, essentially bring our app to life. It's awesome. I'll link it down in the description if you'd like to try it out, or if you haven't done part 1 yet, I'll link that on a card up here. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Rightio, so in the previous tutorial, we created the UI design here for a home screen and a sign up screen. Now we're going to animate this in ProtoPie. So let's just switch over to ProtoPie. Now what I've done, because I'm working on a relatively small screen so you can see all of the different elements that I've got on screen, what I've done is I've squished the preview player over here in the corner so you'll be able to follow along and see what happens when I start animating this. But if you're on a larger screen, this isn't going to be an issue. You have loads of screen space. But if you are on a smaller screen like a laptop, I would recommend personally just closing down the preview here and just connecting up one of your devices. Now you can download the ProtoPie app. And you can see here, I've hooked up my iPhone so I can actually start animating this and creating that animation in ProtoPie and preview it on my smartphone rather than having this preview in the corner. But as I say, for this tutorial, I'd like you to be able to see what I'm doing as I go through it because of course my smartphone is on my desk and you can't see my smartphone. So with that waffle out of the way, what we're going to do is I've created a new document, and in the previous tutorial, we are using the iPhone 678 size. So we've got 375 by 667. So we'll select that up here, and you can pick different sizes or you can go and add a custom size. So you can see here, iPhone 8, we've got that size, iPhone 7, we've got the same size. So essentially it's all the same size for those devices, and we're doing it at 2x. So those are the dimensions. Let's click OK. Okay, nothing's changed. We've got our iPhone artboard there. Next, what we need to do is go to File and down to Import. Now we can select Adobe XD CC and it will take the file in XD that is open. So currently we already have it open, and we can see we've got 2 artboards to choose from. And again, the import size, we're going to leave this at 2x. Now we want to import our layer structure. Yep, keep all of these positions and size of layers. We'll overwrite those, and we want to update the layer order and grouping structure. In the previous tutorial, we spent a lot of time grouping and organizing those layers, so we don't want to lose that. So let's click import, and it will do its thing. And you can see it imports all of our different sections. So we have our nav, we have our button, our main text, our gradients, and our background. Now you can see when we cropped the background before, it doesn't extend outside the edge. We didn't do the same thing to the angular gradient, and it does stick out the side. But of course, don't worry, because it goes outside the artboard, you can never see it. So you can see here on the preview, you can't actually see anything outside. And of course we can zoom in. And the great thing about ProtoPie is a lot of the controls mirror these same functions in XD. And one thing I found from using this bit of software is it's very intuitively designed. So if you think, oh, I wonder if I could do that, the chances are that you can. So when I started using it, I would start grouping things and ungrouping them, and it behaves exactly the same as XD. So as you move from XD to ProtoPie, there's a really nice bit of consistency in terms of the usability of the product. Okay, so let's start animating this. I'm just going to zoom in a bit and see if I can just adjust the size of this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is when the user lands on this screen, I want the background image to display. So first of all, let's just hide everything else. We'll focus on the background and we'll unlock this, and I'm going to click background. Now I'm going to add a trigger. And the trigger is essentially what is going to start the animation or the event or whatever's going to happen. Well, for this, it's going to be when the user lands on the web page. So it's going to be start. That's the condition, is the beginning, the start. So we'll click start. So when it starts, now I've got to add a response, so I can click the plus icon. Okay, when the user lands on this screen, when it starts, what is going to happen? Well, I want the background to just fade in. So we'll start really simple. So we'll go with opacity. Now, if you select a response and you don't have your layer selected, it will highlight it in yellow. So these yellow areas here are the areas that I need to change. So I just basically need to go back into this selection and select background, just so it knows which layer I'm referring to. So what I'll do is I'll select the background over here on the left, and I'm going to drop down that opacity. So I'm essentially selecting the start state of the animation. Next, I'm going to go over here onto the opacity. Now, because this is orange, it means that I've got a setting I need to set. So I've already set the start state on 0, start state, I can't say that. And I want to change it to 100%. So we'll bring this slider up, and you can see it's no longer yellow because I've made that change. And on the preview here, what we can do is we can have this A selected. So every time I make a change, it will automatically play it in the preview. Or I can click on this arrow here and just reload it, and you can see it happens. So it's a pretty quick transition. Now, if I select opacity, we'll change the duration to, let's go for 1 second. So there we go, a little bit longer, that fade. And I can add a delay as well. So we'll set that to 1 as well. So when I click reload, it waits a second, then it plays that fade opacity transition over the course of a second. And what I like to do as well is double click on these actions. So I'm adding start, and I'm going to write after it dash background, just so I know which element I'm referring to. And you can turn it on and off here as well, but we'll leave it on for now. Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to do the next one. Now, the next thing that I want to happen once the background is loaded is, I think we'll go with the navigation. So we'll turn this on, and I want the navigation to slide down from the top. So I'll select the navigation and add a trigger. And again, it's going to be on start. And I'm going to add a response. And I want this to both fade in and slide down. Now, in fact, no, we'll just keep this sliding down. We'll keep this sliding down. So I want it to move. Okay, so now I've got the properties here that I need to set. So first of all, I need to set the start position. Well, before I set the start position, it's definitely worth making a note of where I want it to end up. So for me, I like to just open a text document sometimes for this. In fact, I'm going to position it down here. I think it will fill this space rather nicely. Oh, look at that. Fantastic. Excellent UI management. Okay, so we have the position here. I think I may even just round that up to the nearest pixel. So the nav is 29 on the X, and on the Y is 25, just in case I forget that. And then what I'm going to do is hold down Shift and use the arrow keys. Again, you can see same functionality as XD. And I'm just going to move it out of the artboard. I want it to start up here and swing down like this. So I'm setting that start position by selecting the layer here and moving it. Next, I'm going to click on the move transition and just confirm that layer is the nav group. So that's why we grouped everything before, because now I can select the whole navigation as one object. And I want to move it to this X and Y position. And that is, of course, 29 and 25. That is where I want it to end up. I want the duration to be 1 second. Now the start delay we've already got as 1 second for the background. So let's set this to 2. And you can see in the preview the nav slides down. I might make that a little bit quicker, so maybe 0.6. There we go. And you can see as I make any changes, so if I went for 1.5, you can see it automatically has this selected and it reloads that transition. And if you are doing this, if you have a phone or a tablet connected, you can actually see this and interact with it on the device as well as having it on screen here. Okay, so there we go. We've animated. You can double click on this text and I'll just add a hyphen and call that nav. And you can of course move all of these around. So if you wanted the nav at the top, you could move that around. Now next what I'm going to do is animate the main text. So let's turn this one on. There we go. And with it selected, I'm going to add a trigger. So I think we'll move this again on start. And the response is going to be move. Just confirm again the layer. So it's main text, that's the group. So you can see this is why we spent a lot of time grouping all of the layers before. And I just want to select main text and make a note of these positions. So we have 47 on the X and 281 on the Y. And what I'm going to do is hold Shift and use the left arrow key and go 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, select the move and then type the X and Y position where I would like it to end up. And of course we have a start delay, so let's go for 2 seconds this time. So in the background we have a 1 second start delay, navigation we have a 1.5 second start delay, and the main text we have a 2 second start delay. So I'm just going up in increments of 0.5. And the duration I think we'll go for again 0.6. Now I want to add a second response to this. I want this to have a 0 opacity and to then transition through to having 100% opacity. Now when I'm adding these responses, it asks me to select the layer I'm referring to again. So let's just select main text and add this, and we'll go opacity. And you can see here, because I had the layer already selected, it's already selected main text here, and I don't have to confirm to it again. So if you see a yellow box here, it just means you've got to confirm to ProtoPie the layer that you want to apply this effect to. So let's click on the main layer and we'll set the start state as 0. Click on the opacity in yellow and we'll change it to 100. And of course, it doesn't work as intended. That's because we haven't actually added the start delay. So our move has a start delay of 2. Our opacity has a start delay of 0. So let's change that to 2 as well. So these two here now work in tandem. And you can of course scan along this timeline here as well. But I find it a lot easier to work with the numbers here and move things by numbers. So let's play. There we go. And the duration is pretty quick on that opacity. So again, we'll do 0.6 for both of those. There we go. So much more subtle transition. And now we're going to do the same for the button. So let's turn the button on, click on our button layer and add a trigger. So on start. And in fact, let's just double click and give these some names. So we'll call this main text. So I'm just referencing all of these layers or groups that I've already created. And we'll go with button. So the response for this is going to be, well, exactly the same. We're going to have a move and an opacity. So the button, let's make a note of that X and that Y. So we've got 124 on the X and 470 on the Y. So whereas with the main text, we hold Shift and went to the left 4 times, I'm going to hold Shift and go 1, 2, 3, 4 on the right arrow key. So this is going to come in from the opposite side. So first of all, we'll drop the opacity down. We can select opacity, just confirm the layer again. So we are on the button layer and we'll change that to 100%. The duration will be 0.6. And again, we're going up in increments of 0.5. So the start delay for this from the beginning of everything to this button animating is going to be 2.5. This one here was 2. and now the move as well. So we need to select the layer button and just add in the X and the Y. So we've got 124 and 470. A duration of 0.6. I'm trying to be consistent here. And the start delay of 2.5. So the opacity animation and the move animation happen all at the same time at the same speed. And we can play this. So our main text slides in from the left, and then straight after we have our button come in from the right. In fact, we could actually change this. We could hold Shift and select both the move and the opacity on our button and edit these properties together. So we could change this to 2. And what this will do is our main text and our button will then come in at the same time from opposite directions. Let's play that again. Okay, let's do that. That looks great. And we don't want this to take too long. This is a home screen after all, and as human beings we don't have a lot of patience. So let's have this animation happen a little bit quicker. Okay, so lastly we've got the gradient. This is just going to add a little bit of kind of visual finesse to our screen design. So we'll turn this one on. And well, what have we got? We've got 2 rectangles. So I'm actually going to ungroup this now. And we'll call this left and right. Now the reason I've ungrouped these is because I want to actually animate these separately. So first of all, I'm going to select the left one and just make a note of the X and the Y position in here. Now I'm not going to alter these because I know that they're aligned so they line up with each other. So I'm actually just going to leave the decimal point. So we've got -85.74 on the X, and on the Y we've got 164.4. And then for the right, if I just select this shape now, I could just copy and paste these values here as well. And then for the Y, 344.04. So you can work with decimal points, you can work with whole numbers, it's entirely up to you. I think for this one I'm just going to leave the design unaltered. So let's select this first one here, that's this one at the top. And I'm going to add a trigger on start and add a response. And again, I'm going to move this and adjust the opacity. So for the opacity, let's click on that left layer here. I want the opacity to be 0. In fact, we'll do the opacity next. We'll do that second because I need to first move this. So I want this to do something like this, to fly in along that same angle. So I'm going to move this over here somewhere, and I can just use those arrow keys to nudge that in place. And then click on move, just confirm that layer, so it's the left layer, and then add in the X and the Y value. So 164.4. And the start duration, we'll go for 2.5, and the duration 1 second. And we can see in the preview here, it slides in like this. In fact, we don't even really need the opacity because it slides in from one side, and we have a graduation going from a very light part of the gradient here to a darker one. It actually kind of simulates some sense of opacity anyway. So we can just select opacity and hit delete or backspace on the keyboard. Fantastic. Okay. So I'm going to just double click the name. We've got start, and I'm going to call this left gradient. And I'm just going to update the layer names as well. Just, it makes it so much easier when you get lots of layers and lots of different animations. Okay, so we need to do exactly the same thing now for this other one. So this is the right side. So we're just going to add a trigger on start and add a response of move. And again, I didn't have the layer selected on the left here, so I just need to confirm which layer I'm applying this to. That's the right gradient. And I've got the X and Y position here, so I can just move this up like so. and then click on the move and just confirm those positions. So I'm just copying and pasting what I've got here. Start delay is 2.5 and the duration is 1 second. So I'm literally matching, and I can hold Command or Control and select both of these, and I can change these properties for the duration and the start delay and even the transition easing and the type. I can do this all at once for multiple things. So when I click play now, what we should see is actually everything loads in and then the gradient slides in from the left and the right at the same time. There we go. So it's just that nice little bit of visual finesse at the end just to really finish off this design. Cool. Okay. Well, this is looking pretty good. At the moment, we've got this as scene 1. So we're going to go and add a new scene now. And it adds a new blank scene with that same device type. And we'll go to File, Import, and Adobe XD. Now this is going to be our sign up screen. And it's remembered all of the options before, so we can click Import. And there we go, we have all of our layers. So what we need to do now is we've added that in. Let's just jump back to scene 1. We need to select our button. Now we need to add an action to this button. So let's add a trigger. So on tap, because this is a smartphone, so no click, just on a tap. And I'm going to call this tap dash button. And remember, as I said, we could move this up here. So we have all our button animations together. And I'm going to add a response. So on tap, what do I want to happen? Well, I want to jump. And of course, there's loads of different options here. And what we're covering in this tutorial is honestly just scratching the surface of what is possible in ProtoPie. But we're going to jump. Now jump means that we can jump to another scene. So when the user taps on our sign up button, we want them to jump to our scene 2, which is of course where we put the assets for our sign up screen. So we want them to jump to scene 2. How do we want them to get there? Well, we can choose some different transitions. So we might want them to slide in. And we might want the screen to slide in from bottom to top. And you can experiment with lots of different ones. And we don't want any start delay. So when the user taps on that sign up button, we instantly want to perform this transition here to this scene. And you can see if I go onto the preview, that's exactly what happens. But we don't have a way to get out of this screen. We're stuck on here. So we need to make our close icon actually work. So let's switch back over to scene 2. And we can click on our cross icon. Now, sometimes selecting icons and using them as part of prototypes and animations can be a bit fiddly. Something ProtoPie does very well is you can see here it's added this pink guide. Now, I believe this is something that is called a hitbox. So sometimes in XD, if the user doesn't exactly tap on the line of the cross, which is going to be sometimes very difficult, it won't perform the animation. And adding something like a hitbox just ensures that if the user taps anywhere within this space, it will perform the animation. Now what we could even do is add a shape. So we've added a rectangle and it just adds it up there. And I'm going to go and actually create a larger hitbox because some of us have got really chunky fingers and I just want to make this as easy as possible for someone to use. So you know when you're using an app and you have to click multiple times and it gets really frustrating, we don't want any of that to happen. So I'm just going to add this rectangle and add it inside the cross icon group. Now, of course, I don't want a big grey rectangle here. I want to drop that opacity. But what it means now is that this cross icon has a much larger area because there is a huge rectangle in it. So this group now has a larger clickable area. So let's select our cross icon group. And in fact, you can use that hitbox technique when you're working in XD as well with prototyping. You're essentially just creating an invisible shape so the clickable area becomes larger. So we've got the cross icon, and we're going to add a trigger. And the trigger is on tap. So when someone taps anywhere in that space, it adds a response. And the response is to jump to another scene. And you can set this as previously shown scene, but if there isn't a previously shown scene, it won't do anything. So we're just going to select scene 1 for this tutorial. Transition slide out. So before we did a slide in, now we'll do a slide out. And we're going to do top to bottom and with no start delay. So if we click this now, you can see it slides out and then it goes back to our scene. However, unfortunately, it plays that same animation again. And we don't want to do that. We want to take the user instantly back to that first scene. So let's go on previously shown scene. And what it will do is it won't play that animation again. So there we go. Let's switch back to our first scene and we'll start all the way from the beginning. So we can see, let's do that again. We can see our animation comes in, everything animates. We can click our sign up button, the screen slides up. We click it and it slides down and it doesn't play that animation again. So it automatically goes to the previous scene and its final state. So let's watch this one more time. Click that animation. In fact, I'll make this a bit bigger, just so you can see everything we've done here. So we play the animation, everything slides in at the appropriate times, and you can go and fine tune this if you like. We can click sign up. We see the sign up screen and we can close this and it slides down. Now, of course, I'm doing this in the preview window, but you can of course have your phone hooked up to ProtoPie with the ProtoPie app, and you can actually tap on the button and see it all work, and you get a much more true to life experience. And there we go, that's the end of part 2. We've designed our mobile app screen in XD and we've animated it in ProtoPie. So as I say, it's definitely worth checking out at the link in the description. I've had a ton of fun playing around with ProtoPie and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of what it's actually capable of doing. But as always, if you have any questions or comments, please do drop them down below. A huge thank you to the people who support me on Patreon. Thank you so much. If you'd like to become a patron of the channel or find out more information, there is a link down below. But as always, like this video if you enjoyed it, take care, and I'll see you next time.